situation at the time. You see, all divided. Italy was all divided. You wanted to put it all together. This book, The Prince, was written in 1513, so the beginning of the 16th century. The other book we have by Machiavelli is Discourses on Living. The Discourses on the first decade of living. We use it also to understand the movement, something. So in this book, what it says? It says the Republic is the best. It explains what is republicanism. He said the Republic of Florence didn't work well, but it's still the best form of government, because in the Republic you have all the parts of society involved in the power, and you have even the people who are armed because they have to defend the Republic, and so this makes, institutional change always ready, because sometimes you have people rioting and you have a balance of power, let's say. How does it do? Why this book is also important for us? Because at the time you have most of political thinking was about speculation, metaphysics, theology. He said, no, let's be empiric. And what is empiric? It's looking at history, and to say, the Florentine Republic didn't work well, it ended sooner. Why? Let's try to understand. And how can we understand? Let's look at the past. And let's rediscover the Roman Republic, the antiquity institution, because the Roman Republic, it worked well. So he started to look back and he analyzed the Roman Republic to justify why. This way of looking at the past is something that describes what we started at the end of the Middle Ages. We started to look back again at the antiquity, and the ancient civilization. And this movement that brought us to look, this was so Machiavelli investigated the Roman Republic, with Cialdini, the Roman Republic, and then you have, Leonardo and Michelangelo, and so on. Then we started to look at the past. We wanted to build the Dome of Florence, and we had no idea in the Middle Ages how to build a proper dome. What he did, Brunelleschi went to Rome and they rediscovered the Pantheon made by the ancient Romans. So we started again to look at ancient civilization at more than 1,000 years before, and so we have this intellectual movement which we call Renaissance. The Renaissance. In Florence, there was the Renaissance, means that we started, to rediscover antiquity and how this ancient civilization, the Greeks and the Romans, were driven by progress. Together with Renaissance, we have an intellectual movement which was together with Renaissance, which was almost the same thing, which is humanism. We always represent humanism, as I showed you. When you look at humanism, you have to look at this image. To put again the human being at the center of our thinking, because during the Middle Ages, all our thinking was to God. Next to the Middle Ages, we have beautiful painting, but all the paintings are about Jesus Christ and the saints. In the Middle Ages, we started, to paint the human body, to put the human body at the center of art, of literature. How we use Machiavelli to understand the end of the Middle Ages, because Machiavelli separated politics from morality. But then during this century, between the 15th century and 16th century, meaning from 1400, in between 1400 to 1500, we really get out from the Middle Ages. Last time we said thanks to four major processes. The first one I say now, it's humanism and Renaissance. Okay? You have to be aware that humanism and Renaissance is different from Enlightenment. Enlightenment is 250 years later. Okay? We will get to Enlightenment later. The Enlightenment is much more, advanced, refined. Humanism and Renaissance is mostly a cultural movement. Enlightenment is a very political, intellectual movement. So don't mess it up. We have Renaissance and humanism. Humanism is putting the human being against at the center of our thinking instead of God, instead of religion. And Renaissance is rediscovering the ancient civilization. So it's not yet enlightenment. This movement of getting rid of the dominance of religion will take 300 years, and at the end will be called enlightenment, putting light where there was the shadow of superstition, of religion, and so on. But it's then 300 years. Let's get back to what we are interested in. It's how do we go from Middle Ages to modernity? How do we go from Middle Ages to modernity? We have humanism and Renaissance. What else happened in those years? The discovery of the Americas. Discovery of Americas is very important because we consider as a symbolic year of starting of the modern era 1492, which is when, Cristoforo Colombo. Yeah, Cristoforo Colombo, He departed, he wanted to go to India, and he arrived to this place, and he said, India, very nice, but then he realized it was not India, it was new place he didn't know. So, this, it started to change the image we have of the world. Yeah, we still have people around the world who think that the earth is flat, but at the time was almost anybody had this idea, So, we start to discover that this world is different, is much bigger than we thought, is much bigger than we thought. So 1492, discovery of America, it's, a kind of starting symbolic or point of origin of modernity, of political modernity. We discover that place, for us is a very big step forward, because we use this date as a beginning of modernity, beginning of an era of progress, of transformation, but we said also that for Western, we call modernity, we call the birth of modernity is actually also the beginning of colonization. So Europeans went there and discovered that there were populations living. The indigenous of Latin America, huge civilization, the Maya. The Mayas was a huge civilization, very cultivated, very powerful civilization, but they were not Christian. And at the time, the church was dominating the thing. And so the point was, they're not Christians, so are they human beings? We're not sure they are human beings. They gave this choice, either you become a Christian or it was genocide. So what if they exterminated all of them? Same in North America. How do we go from the Middle Ages to modernity? Humanism, Renaissance, discovery of America. Together with Protestant, before Protestant Reformation, let's say the fourth one, and then we go to Protestant Reformation. What is the other one? Scientific revolution. Yeah. What did he say, Galileo Galilei? So it's not as they thought that the sun is turning around the earth, but it's the other way around. Is the earth turning around the sun? So the universe is not as we thought. It's much bigger than we thought. So they discover, the universe is, the earth is much bigger than we thought. This puts somehow in crisis the image of the world that we had during the Renaissance through the Catholic, Roman Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church was saying, God looks at you, he takes notes of everything that you do, and then at the end you go through to the judgment, you go to hell, or you go to paradise, and so on and so forth. This put in crisis, the universal system of the church, and then we have the biggest thing, as you said, is the Protestant Reformation. Why? Because we say the Roman Catholic Church was the biggest institution in Europe. We got a split, and this was a huge shift. How do we go from Middle Ages to modernity? Through this process. The last thing, Gutenberg was the guy who invented printing. So scientific revolution, the invention is, it's a technology that resulted from the scientific innovation, and this technology also took part in the big religious movement. Because a guy, what did he do? He did, you know what? I translate the Bible from Latin to German, and I print it, and I give it to the people. And I give to people because, until that moment, you have all of us, individuals, people, and you have God. But how individual can talk to God? They have to go to the priest, and the priest say, yeah, okay, tell me, I'm going to tell you. And, sometimes you have to go to the priest and say, yeah, I committed this sin, I'm afraid I'm going to hell, and so on. The priest is telling you, yeah, you do this, you'll be forgiven. But also at the time, the priests ask, you pay the church, you give a lot of money to the church, and we'll forgive you. And you go to paradise. There was one priest who was so angry at this, Martin Luther. He said, the church is corrupted. The church is corrupted. You should have your own direct relationship with God. You should read the Bible by yourself. We translate it in German, we print it, and we give to people. So that people can directly talk, can have their own relationship with God. And so, you know the story of Luther, but here, you should study this in the exam of modern history. You have to remind that we only focus on ideas, so not on the history. When I ask you, tell me about Martin Luther, you have to tell me the ideas of Martin Luther. Not to say, yeah, he was born in this year and blah, 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 from his family was this, and one day he got up, he went to put that. No. What is the main principles of these 95 theses you wrote, but what are the main principles of Protestantism? Why is so important? Martin Luther, he was a conservative. He wanted to preserve the origin of Christian values. He was very conservative. He was a very traditionalist, but his ideas made a very powerful force of progress. Why? Because this idea that you should talk by yourself to God is the roots of modern individualism. Western civilization is an individualistic civilization. Western civilization thinks that the individual is the basis of politics, is the basis of society, is the unity, the holy unity of all life. Before that, community were more important than an individual. We can sacrifice the life of an individual in order for them to protect the interest of the community. But in Protestantism, we see seeds of modern individualism. He wrote these 95 theses, he nailed to the door of the church in his city, Wittenberg, in 1517. He criticizes the Catholic Church because he says you sell indulgences. These indulgences means if you pay, we forget your sins. He started this, he wanted a reformation of the church to get back on the origin, to get back to the origin of what was written, in the scriptures, in the holy scriptures. This date, when he put his 95 theses, 1517 on Gutenberg, marks, is the founding moment of the Protestant Reformation. 4 years later, Luther was excommunicated by the church. He took this excommunication and departed. Yeah, we stand. We want a new church. He translated the Bible from Latin to German, so to make it accessible for all the people. The main principle is you should be able to talk yourself. You don't need, the mediation of the church. You should be able to also have an individual relationship with God. This was a powerful movement because actually the Roman Catholic Church was the most powerful institution, but it was corrupted. It was very much corrupted. So in all the countries of Northern Europe, not in Italy, because you know that in Italy we have the Vatican and the church is very powerful. Not in France, not in Spain, very Catholic countries, but Germany, Great Britain, Denmark, Scandinavian countries, they started to become Lutherans. Yeah, when I ask you about Reformation, I want you to focus on these consequences. So the split of Christianity, in which you have the Roman Catholic Church, which remains as the powerful political institution, mostly in the Catholic countries, and the new Protestant denomination, because some kings, some princes started to say, yeah, I become Protestant. So he challenged for the first time the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, which dominated the entire Middle Ages, and give the rise to this new Protestant movement, which included different, like nowadays, which included different tendencies, like Lutheranism, Calvinism, Anglicanism, and so on. This was, also it's the root of national identities somehow, because, through these divisions in different countries, they start to grow up also national identities according to which religion you become. Because before that, you have this idea that the Roman Catholic Church, that Christianity is a sort of empire in which there is this common principle of Christianity which dominates all over Europe. Then we start to see the growth of the birth of the national identities. And as I said, it's the rise of individualism. So it changed the authority of the Catholic Church by emphasizing individual faith and personal relationship with God. It helped modern individualism to rise. Protestant Reformation brought big religious war in Europe. All the 16th century and part of the 17th century was dominated by devastating religious war, because for the Catholics, Protestants were heretics, and they had to be killed, and they fought to establish their own kingdoms, the Protestants. We had this long war. The religious war had a significant impact on Europe, because even the infrastructures were destroyed, roads, bridges, building. It was, a bloody century. Like for 30 years, from 1618 to 1648, 30 years of non-stop war everywhere in Europe. Big war, big war. What do we have at the end of these wars with 1648? 1648 is the Treaty of Westphalia, which is considered the first moment in which national states, or just say states, emerged. We have these four movements toward modernity. Let's repeat it again. Humanism, Renaissance, scientific revolution, the discovery of America, and also Protestant things is very important. So Protestants made new things. Protestantism, the schism, made new things happen. We have to consider that Martin Luther was very conservative, but he produced a big step in the future at the end. So who is Protestant? You're Protestant, right? Which kind of Protestant? Evangelical. Who else is Protestant here? Which kind of Protestant? No, you say, yeah.
Which kind of Protestant?
Yeah, Pentecostal. Where are you from? Ethiopia. Okay, so it's big community in Ethiopia, Protestants. So you still see that, you know, here in Europe, we have a division, still have a division between the Catholic countries, let's say rooted in Catholic countries, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, the Mediterranean countries, you know. France is a very like country, but still centuries and centuries they have this kind of culture. And the northern states, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, Scandinavian countries, and so on. Even the Britons, they have their own Anglican church, which is still Protestant. So what would you say is the difference between these two parts of Europe, the Mediterranean Europe rooted in Catholicism and Northern Europe rooted in Protestantism? So they say they claim they have stronger work ethics, and also they claim they're more individualistic society. Here in Italy, in Spain, the family is very important. You know, the family is very important. The communities are very important. While you know, the Germans, the Dutch, they claim to be more free because they're very much individualist. So we see that this was a very, very, very important movement. Right now we understand how we get from the Middle Ages to modernity. What we want to understand now is part 2 of the course is about early modernity. So we have to understand big religious war, blood, shell everywhere. You are Protestant, I'm gonna kill you. So huge words. And in 1648 we have the Westphalia Treaty. In which we stopped to have this war. The Westphalia Treaty we consider as the origin of the state system in Europe. Now that we have considered antiquity and the Middle Ages, we go to modernity, and the early modernity we focus only on one thing. It's the invention of the modern state. So we saw that so far political life was organized on the urban level, the cities, the police, the Roman Republic, so urban level, or big empires, or kingdoms, or principati. We didn't have states. Nowadays we still live on states all over the world. And who invented the state? The state was invented by the theories of the social contract. The theories of the social contract is a political theory which we call contractarianism. What is new? Why is important? What is the point? It's that from that moment they thought that political authority was the result of the divine law. You were the king, the sovereign, for God's will. Because you were chosen by God. Then, from this moment, we say political authority is the result of a social contract. And this, you know, these theories, we call it contractarianism. And through these theories of the social contract, we want to study the invention of the modern state. And we focus on 3 thinkers, 3 political philosophers who were the most important contractarianists. One is Thomas Hobbes, the second is John Locke, and the third one is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. These 3 thinkers, by thinking of the social contract, they made important inventions that we still have nowadays. Thomas Hobbes invented the concept of sovereignty, the modern state, sovereignty and the modern state. John Locke invented the principles of liberalism, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau invented the principles of modern democracy. Now we briefly introduce what is the contractarianism. So let's say we live in this situation. There is war everywhere. We we cannot, there is religious war, because we think that the authority, the political authority, comes from religion, for divine will, for the will of God. So, if religion is so messy and we have religious war everywhere, we need to say, yeah, but how can we decide? Because we don't know which God is the real God, which church is the real church. So how can we establish a political authority if we have two different sorts of religious power? If we don't know who has to say, because so far we have the Pope decided, but right now, we have this proliferation of churches or religious institutions, so we cannot decide who is the king. We cannot decide what is political authority, so we have to find a new principle for political authority. So contractarianism, the theories of the social contract say, okay, let's try to understand what is the source of the political authority. Let's try to understand what is the legitimation of political authority. Okay, so they say, okay, but if it's not religion, the source of political authority, if we cannot rely on the church to give political authorities to someone, how can we decide what is the origin of political authority? Contractarianists, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and all the theorists of the social contract say, okay, so we have to do an experiment of thinking. We have to use, our intellect and do a thought experiment. So, we have to imagine that political authority do not exist. So we have contractarianism. It may start by imagining a situation in which political authority do not exist, and call this situation the state of nature. It's say, we have this idea, the state of nature, okay? We have a situation in which political authority do not exist. We like, savages. It's just like, right now an airplane arrives, takes all of us and brings us in a desert island. And there is no authority, there is no police, there is no king, there is no anybody. So it's all of us, just us in this island. No authority, no police, not anybody. So maybe our society grows, we start to have families, so then we become a bigger community, and so we say, so in this community, if we go to this state of nature, to this island, would we establish a political authority, yes or not? And under which conditions? Would we do it, yes or not? Why would we do this? How would we legitimize the political authority that we establish? Would we establish a government among us, yes or not? So, this is the situation. So, first thing you have to understand is the situation of the state of nature, where life is natural. We just live there, no government. So we have to think. We have to think the state of nature. Contractarianism is a political theory based on these two steps. We have state of nature, we have the state of nature, and then the second step is we do a social contract to establish a government. So far, as we have seen, Middle Ages, St. Augustine, they imagine the situation in which you have the original sin, the original situation. But he said, no, let's move away from the Genesis, from the Bible. Let's imagine this state of nature as a situation in which we don't have the government, and so let's imagine all together under which condition we would decide to have a government, under which conditions we would legitimize to have a government, under which conditions we would sign among us a social contract in which we all recognize a government to make order in the society. To this question, these three thinkers gave different answers. Thomas Hobbes gives an answer, and through this answer invented the concept of sovereignty, which is the crucial concept for a state. John Locke gave a different answer, and so he funded the idea of liberalism. Jean-Jacques Rousseau gave a different answer and funded the idea of democracy. So we will focus tomorrow on these three thinkers, on these three theories, and we will deepen the thing. So let's say last time, contractarianism, social contract, they live in a situation in which there is religious war all over Europe. People are fighting because the split of the Roman Catholic Church, the split of the Christian world, makes difficult to legitimize the political power. Because in the Middle Ages, political power was legitimized by the Pope, by the authority, because we thought that the sovereign is sovereign because of the will of God. Then we have religious war after Protestantism, and with religious war it's very difficult to decide who is legitimized to be the sovereign. We start to make these theories. This theory is the theory that the political authority results from a social contract, from a contract between the population, not anymore from the big God, but from a contract between the people who compose the society. And to imagine how this contract should work and should grow up, we go to imagine the state of nature, a state in which there is no political authority. And they ask, under which condition would we build up? And then we will see that, for example, if you think that men are bad, you will think a social contract in which you want to establish a very strong state. And this is the case of Thomas Hobbes. And then you will have John Locke who said, yeah, but we have to put some limitation to the state in order to protect individual rights and liberties. John Locke, the founding father of liberalism. And Rousseau, he said, no, this is not true. Human beings are good, positive anthropology, so we have to establish a system in which all of them can participate, democracy.